My name is Ann McClure, and I'm a residential realtor with McInerney Associates, and this is our latest episode of Ask the Experts. We're joined today by our friend Andrew Walker, and Andrew was born and raised here in Montgomery County, and he studied horticulture and landscape management at the University of Maryland, and had a brief stint with another landscaping employer before coming to the Care of Trees, which has now, well, several years ago, he told me, is the same company or had become Davey Tree Experts, which is where you've been for 17 years, right, Andrew?
That's correct.
So we're going to hear more from Andrew in a little bit, but he's a local. He knows all the issues from cicadas to pollen that we enjoy in our mid-Atlantic region. And we're going to hear more from him in a minute. So I want to thank you for coming to Ask the Expert today, whether you're watching us live or watching us later, as we found a lot of people like to do. Today, we're going to talk about trees. We're going to hear from a real expert who's, like I said, an arborist. There are a lot of issues that come up this time of year with trees and the care of trees and how to manage trees or know if you have one that's sick or needs a little help. And I think Andrew's a great resource. We have Andrew here with us at Ask the Expert because starting shortly after everything shut down last year during the pandemic, we wanted to bring you really good information from local companies who were experts in their field. So we were still getting good information out to our clients. Everybody was sort of in lockdown at the time, and we were still supporting local businesses. Both things we're really passionate about. And Jennifer, who works with me in the office, got the great idea to take something we did as a forum where we would invite people to a happy hour and have a whole bunch of experts roving to interviewing an expert every other week. We started it every week, and now we do every other week. So Andrew's our latest expert, and we're so happy to have him here today. He's helped me personally. We're going to get into some more very specific details here in a moment. But I did want to tell you first a little market update. So we are still experiencing a very fast market. We have very limited inventory on houses and townhouses and garden style condos. But we are starting to see the phone ring a little bit less, and it's graduation season and kids are going to start getting out of school and people are going to travel, maybe really travel for the first time in many months. And so I think we're just hearing the phones ring a little bit less. We're seeing a little fewer showings, instead of everything being blocked out all day on every single listing. Now there's a few sprinkles of open space in there. So still really fast, very low inventory market, but just maybe a tiny, tiny bit less intense. So we'll see if that trend continues or if this is just like a little blip on the radar screen. The one segment of the market that's got a little challenge is high-rise and mid-rise condos. That sector is still a little bit soft. If you have questions about your particular marketplace, your neighborhood, or an area you're interested in, I will be happy to chat with you. So please let me know, and don't be shy about reaching out. Or if you're in a different area and you need to find a good expert there, I'll be happy to find somebody who I think is a good caliber realtor and make introductions. So that's a quick, very general market update. I don't want to delay any further and want to get started here with Andrew. So Andrew, thank you for joining us today. We're so happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
It looks like you're out in your mobile office, probably roving around between appointments.
That's correct.
So I know how those mobile offices work. In fact, Jennifer just got me this like tray that kind of connects to your steering wheel so you can use your laptop or your iPad, which is really cool.
That's what I have.
Oh, you do? That's awesome. So Andrew, we're just going to launch right in if that's okay. We've got a lot of material and we've chatted with you, and I know that we'll be able to talk for a while and probably not run out of anything to say. So I want to say that you've helped many of my clients with tree questions and tree health issues and so on. You've helped in my own community, and I'm really grateful for it. I think although trees are ever present, I think that they're in the back of homeowners' minds sometimes. They're like, remodel the kitchen, I got to take care of the running toilet and, water in the basement and so on. But it's like, actually, paying attention to and being mindful about the trees, I don't think is always top of mind for people. And as you know, it can cause huge problems at a house, whether it's, drainage or, tree limbs that are dropping that could cause damage to the house. And we're going to get into that a little bit. So when I think of working with vendors in terms of my own clients, I think having an arborist you trust it should be one of your housing advisors, right? You call your great electrician, your HVAC contractor, call your arborist when you have a question, because you've told me you guys do free consultations. We don't want people to take advantage of that, but it's great. They can have you out, bounce questions off you, and you can get to know the lay of their land. Can you tell us a little bit about what an arborist is and how it differs from a landscaper? Because I don't think everybody distinguishes.
Yeah. So a arborist, what I like to say is tree doctor, or
Tree doctor.
It's just someone who is an arboriculturalist. Say that 3 times fast, but it's just someone who studies trees, woody plants, basically. Sometimes even vines. So that's sort of the nutshell of it all. Just someone who studies trees, basically. And we differ from landscapers by what they do, we don't, and what we do, they don't, and vice versa. So we deal primarily with trees, so pruning them, removing them, grinding stumps, doing plant health care, insect and disease control, air spading. We'll get a little bit into that later on. The preservation of trees, rather than mowing, blowing leaves, edging, mulching, weeding, planting, those kinds of things we normally don't do. So landscapers and us are more of a symbiotic relationship where if someone says, hey, do you do landscaping? And I go, no, but I might know some landscapers to refer them to. And same thing where the landscaper, the client might say, hey, can you prune or remove this tree? And they say, no, I know someone who can do that. It's a little more skilled. So you want someone who's skilled in that same profession. You don't want a electrician to paint your house. So
right.
You want to keep.
And I always caution against that, because sometimes people will be like, oh, the painter said he could do the plumbing. I'm like, don't do that.
No, don't do it.
Don't do it. Well, I like it. You cross-pollinate with the landscapers, right? So there's a little tree analogy.
Yep. We're a very specific breed for sure.
That's good. I'm just wondering, like when I sell a house, and I'm thinking of one in Bethesda that you and I both worked on, I will look at the trees as part of the property, and I will say, there's some tree maintenance or management to do here, because it can be costly. So do you recommend that anybody who has a property has an arborist come out from time to time? And how often might it make sense to have a visit? I mean, obviously people call you when there's a problem, but I'm thinking maintaining and tree health.
Yeah, most people are reactive. So I've had plenty of clients that go, I just bought this house and I was just worried about, inside and getting this done. And then, a large limb fell or a tree fell over, and I have to worry about outside too. So yeah, having an arborist is critical, because I can come out and I can survey that land usually once a year. I have plenty of clients that call me once a year and say, hey, come out and review my trees and let's see how things are going. Because sometimes trees are weird. They don't communicate with us. They don't talk to us. And they can certainly change in a matter of a year for sure. So the more times I'm out there on a property and I'm taking a look at what's going on, I'm going to know their plants. There's plenty of clients that say, they'll call me up and go, oh, you probably don't know me. And then I'll just say, oh, the tree, this tree, that tree. And I'll start listing off what they already have. And they go, wow, good memory. So that's just me being out there and understanding what they have. So
yeah,
to me, it is important, because there's a lot of hazards out there, and you just might not see them with storm-related events through summer and winter, where things can change.
Yeah, so I'm hearing like once a year is a pretty good way to do it. I always feel like this, for me, I don't know if this is accurate, but what I noticed the trees this time of year, because I think I noticed the ones that don't leaf out, and I think something might be wrong. And I also think when the summer storms roll in, you really start to notice what's around you and where you can be vulnerable, because the thought of like a big tree falling is pretty scary. And I know you said they don't actually, like the dead trees don't actually fall that often. We'll get into that because, you know, talking about tree health, we've got huge trees here, you know, in this part of the country, and we have big tree canopies, and we have the wicked summer storms. So, you know, if there are safety concerns or trees overhanging a house, or trees planted too close, maybe they were planted when they were little and they become big and they're possibly impacting the foundation. Like, could you speak on how trees can impact a house?
Well,
or property?
yeah, sure. Well, and trees have, obviously, there's a lot of great things about them, and then there are some downsides to it. So it's sort of like driving a car. It's a necessary evil. Trees are sort of the same way, where they provide shade. It's going to reduce that cost, you know, the electrical bill. They're gonna, you know, help provide homes for animals, which are you know, sometimes nice. Out there that are like that, but other people think they're damaging the tree, and that's not necessarily the case. Where you might have a cavity in a tree, we get cavities in our mouth. Trees can also get the same thing, where you know, a branch maybe broke off and then decay had set in, and then it creates a hole in the tree. And sometimes that can be an issue, but generally that isn't. And then due to that hole that might be in that tree, animals can certainly make them a home as well. Clearly interests for sure. So you and I had spoke before, and we had mentioned just about, well, when you have a nice landscape, trees, shrubs, perennials, annuals, kind of a mixture of everything, it's just a great thing to see.
Yeah.
Really. So for instance, where we're at a nursing home. A nursing home, they tend to make those really nice, because when you get older, you don't have a whole lot to do but to look at a nice landscape, and that does mean a lot, versus a property, if it's a townhome or apartment complex where there's just kind of boring plants or very little, it just kind of looks drab. So the more trees, shrubs, lower ornamental trees, the more diversity you have, it's certainly better for your psyche in a way.
Yeah.
It helps tree roots help with runoff as well. Just the more plant material you have, even if it's turf, that's certainly going to help. The more soil you have around, that's certainly going to create more runoff, and you certainly don't want that. So plants in general will help with drainage too.
You know, I have had several clients who have, you know, been sort of at that stage of life where they retired many years ago. They've been living independently, but now they're ready to live in one of those communities. You know, not like a nursing home or a care facility, but a retirement community to one level living, that kind of area. And I have noticed time and time again, and I would be this way too, the view that comes up so often. Well, what is the view? And people will or won't move to a particular community based on the units that they can get, or the apartments or villas, and the view. Because I think you're right. They're not getting out and about as much, and where they rest their eyes and how they feel emotionally is huge, you know? So like when you're looking at a tree, Andrew, and it's funny because I was at my sister's house over the weekend, and they have a peach tree, and I noticed all that like gnarly stuff on the leaf. And, you know, my brother-in-law was saying he would have to figure out what to do to treat it. But how can you, and I don't know if that was necessarily a problem, it looks like one, but how can you tell if a tree is sick? Like, that was a very visual thing, and we were at eye level. But I mean, trees, a lot of times the leaves are 50 feet over your head, right?
Yeah. So there's so many different types of diseases out there that can infect certain trees out there. Almost every ornamental tree, flowering tree, fruiting tree in particular, they all get leaf diseases. So you're going to get leaf discoloration, you're going to get leaf distortion, certainly stunted growth. It can be caused by a type of disease, or it can be certainly caused by a root issue as well. There's so many factors when it comes to a sick tree. Like I mentioned before, they don't talk to us. So we have to figure that out. And there's a lot of different scenarios. If was construction involved, was a patio built in, was there an addition added onto a house, was there a driveway built, a deck built? And so tree roots are the lifeline of a tree. If you disturb the the root system, it is certainly going to affect the foliage of the tree. So it's as above, so below. So if you damage that below, you're going to affect the top, and vice versa. Same thing. If you prune too much down of that top, it's going to affect the bottom, meaning the roots. It's a symbiotic relationship, and if you mess with either one of them too much, it's going to affect the other part of the tree. So that's where you get that stunted growth. You'll, if the tree's really sick because of nutrient issues, you're going to get different styles or different shapes of leaves. So some would be smaller, some would be mid-range, some would be much larger. You might get some dieback from the top down because the tree is not pulling up the nutrients up to the top. You'll see some dieback, which then will cause some brittle limbs, which can fall and hit anything that's underneath. If the tree is really, really sick, especially in oaks, for whatever reason, oaks just tend to be more finicky. They don't like drought-like conditions, so they release a pheromone. It's actually ethanol alcohol, and that attracts particular type of boring beetles. And there's hundreds of beetles out there, but there's a few in particular that really affect certain trees. And sometimes it's very specific, a host specific, meaning well, there's a handful that there's a very devastating beetle called ambrosia beetle that can really go after a handful, and they go through all the way through the tree to the heartwood and kill the tree very quickly, where like a bronze birch borer will just literally just go after one birch tree, and that's it. So so when a tree is sick, at times you don't even notice it, but what happens is when those borers come in, they drill through the tree, through the bark, and then they attack the cambium layer, which creates cells. They also attack the xylem and phloem, which is basically the arteries of the tree, which pull nutrients up and then back down. So if you shut that off, tree basically starves, can't pull up its nutrients, and slowly starts to decline. Usually around that time, if it's bad enough, it's almost, it's really hard to come back and treat those borers where you save the tree. So that's
wow. So we can't tell it's sick, but the beetles and the borers can tell it's sick, and they're attracted to it, and then they make a tree that was sick that maybe could have been cured. They make it beyond the point of no return.
Yep. So there's certain trees that you need to be proactive on, where some are just more susceptible. Certain oaks, certainly in the summertime in drought-like conditions, even if they're big trees, you should water them. So it's best to do a preventive insecticide, where if it's basically us taking certain medicines now to try to prevent us from getting sick, and that's the same way with them. You can always do a systemic or injectable insecticide in the tree, which then will prevent those borers. If they come in, it kills them off as they drill into the tree.
So like we take our vitamins, we give them vitamins.
Basically, yeah.
That's great. Yeah, because I mean, what's happening is so high above you, but you know what to look for, but we don't. So this is another reason that you come out and walk around, right?
That's right.
You know, I wanted to mention something about like, there was something on that last, you were saying like, if you like drastically prune a tree, right? Mm-hmm. Because what happens at the top is reflected down below and vice versa. You know how every year people take crepe myrtles and they just buzz cut them? I know you, I have, is it a neighbor calls it crepe murder?
Crepe murdering.
Yeah. Why do they come back? Because people take like everything off those trees. Are they just super hardy trees?
Yeah, there's a handful of trees out there that can withstand that type of pruning. I don't like it because I'm more of a naturalist, so I like to plant the tree. That crepe myrtles generally want to be 25 to 35 feet tall, most of them. There's one called Tonto that will get between 12 to 15, but most of them want to be 25 to 35 feet tall, and people don't realize that. So what they do is they cut them down. Luckily, that particular tree can withstand that type of pruning. Now, when you do that, it will shorten the lifespan of that tree, rather if you left it alone, because you are stressing that tree out. You're taking away all of its, even though you do that during the wintertime, it still has a lot of energy to force all that growth out. So, but another thing it does is, like I mentioned about those boring beetles, what that does with crepe myrtles is that it can stress them out to the point where they get a pest called an aphid. Aphid affects a lot of different trees, but in that one, they will feed on the underside of the leaf, and then they excrete it out because they can't digest all the protein, and it gets really sticky, which is called honeydew, which can attract ants as well. And then that turns black, and that's called sooty mold. So that can get all over a patio, can get all over a deck, a driveway, or a sidewalk, whatever it's planted near. and then it gets all over the leaves and the bark, so it stains it as well. And then it can even make those leaves curl, the aphids do, plus the the sun needs the leaves from the tree, it needs the sun to feed itself, basically, that photosynthesis exchange. Well, if it's caked with a bunch of the sooty mold, then it can't get the sunlight and the food, basically.
Yeah, the nutrients.
So then a lot of those leaves can start to fall off prematurely as well. So, but other than that, that tree can withstand that type of pruning. You can also, it is a pruning practice where, for instance, if you prune a tree very hard, topping basically, in the wintertime, and then do that, prune back to that exact same spot that you do it every single year. It's called plordering, and what happens is it creates a fist. So where you cut it gets wider and wider and wider. So it gives you winter interest, and then everything suckers off of that and goes straight up. Now it makes it denser, but at least in the canopy itself as it grows, but it kind of gives you some winter interest by showing those big giant fists that they create. So
yeah, I've seen that. That's interesting.
That they can withstand that type of pruning. Oh, sorry. Can withstand that type of pruning pretty well. But there are some downfalls to it. But there's other trees that you can't do. You can't do that to a dogwood, you'll kill it.
Yeah, I love the dogwoods. So what about, like, let's say somebody buys a property and it's just like, I don't know, in a new homes community, or a property where somebody clear cut everything in the past, and they're like, I want to add trees. Do you come out and consult with them? Not just your free consultation, but like, here's what you should plant here, and here's what you should expect from this tree, and are you going to do a patio? And like, do you do that kind of, or helping somebody plant a tree, like a memorial tree, and it's got to work with all the trees that are around it? Do you do that kind of consultation too?
Sure. Because my background was also horticulture and landscape management. I worked for a landscape company for a little while. I understand the best of both worlds. So I try, not like landscapers nowadays that just kind of stick things around. I try to evaluate. First, I find out what their needs are, what they're trying to look for. I ask a lot of questions to uncover what they want. So do they want a shade tree? Do they want an ornamental tree? Do they want a flowering one? So there's a lot of different questions you can ask. And then we got to see how much light or shade there is. So then, because sometimes they go, oh, I want to plant this particular tree in like a really shaded area. Or let's say, for instance, a crepe myrtle. It's not going to do well in a shaded area. It needs sun. So, or I want this particular type of evergreen in the shade, and evergreens don't do well. Most of them really don't do well in shade. So you have to know which trees and or shrubs. And then sometimes someone wants to stick a particular type of tree in a very small location, and I'm going to say, well, you can do it, but these are the things that might grow differently than what it's supposed to, because it's trying to search for sun. So there's a lot of different trees that will work well in other certain locations. And
by the way,
try to provide that information.
You just reminded me. I want to have you talk to the community here again, because they were talking about planting 3 crepe myrtles in a very shady area, and I said, you guys, we have Andrew. Just call him. Don't hire the landscapers to do this, because those trees are not going to flower. What you like about them, they won't produce in that area.
They'll get very leggy. They'll get very leggy. So, and they might even get even taller because they're trying to search for that sun. So they'll open up. They won't look as good, and then they won't.
Yeah. I sound like a know-it-all, but I do know a little bit about this kind of stuff, probably from hanging around people like you. So, can we talk again? I mean, we hit on it. But if Jennifer, if you could just put the image up of the benefits that healthy trees provide to a property. I like to hit this too from a resale perspective, because I always think about things from real estate. And I think trees are very pretty in how they can frame a property. But Andrew, are there any rules of thumb for how close you should plant something to a property? Yeah, here are the benefits. And like, this is great because the temperature control, it can shade the house, but I try to implore people, that doesn't mean you should plant it 2 feet off your foundation, right? Right.
Yeah, no, you really shouldn't. You really shouldn't put an oak, or you really don't want a shade tree right next to your house. Generally, tree roots aren't going to, I get this question all the time where, well, the tree roots are gonna come through my basement. And that's usually not the case because tree roots want soil. They don't want a foot of brick or concrete to blast through. So they're going to hit that structure and run along it. And they want soil. Now, if there's a pre-existing crack to a building or to your foundation, and if water sits there in particular, those roots will certainly exploit that and can wiggle and get stronger and start to open things up and kind of break through and make more of a mess there. But they normally don't do that. Trust me, we took down a very large 55-inch, over 100-year-old oak tree where it was next to a very small house, and it was no more than a foot and a half away. I mean, the thing was massive. And they were a pregnant woman. She was afraid. I mean, one of the tree branches was a tree hanging off of it, hanging over their house. And if it fell, it's going right through the house. And they're expecting to have a baby, so they were just nervous of it. It's one of those trees that say, hey, look, I say a tree is a weed if it's in the wrong location. And
yeah, I like that.
And it is. So that tree, even though it was great, it was literally right next to the house, and there was no damage whatsoever to the foundation because the tree roots just went around. They want soil. They find their path. But that the tree was a weed to them because it was just the wrong tree, or they were just too nervous of possibly something happening. And the only way to get rid of that risk is to remove it.
So Andrew, I know we're running tight on time, but can you real quick help people understand how trees help with water runoff? Because I see people remove them sometimes thinking they're helping, and it could actually be the opposite sometimes, right?
Yeah, if you just take everything away and then you don't replenish that site with something, if it's just turf, I mean, that can only do so much. That can only slow down so much water. So yeah, your tree roots are certainly going to suck up that water. There's 3 in particular: river birches, bald cypress, and weeping willows. Those particular 3 trees love water. They love to be around it. So if you have a rather sunny spot that just produces a lot of water there, plant one of those 3 trees because they're going to suck up a lot of that water there. So you need those tree roots and plant roots. So not only trees, but just shrubs in general. The more you have, that's certainly going to be able to use that water and
that's great.
And reduce the amount of runoff.
So Jennifer is showing us how you can improve the soil structure around trees, because this is something I think is so fascinating. And I would just encourage my own clients and my friends, like, hey, pay attention to your trees and your house, because you want to keep them healthy and vibrant, and you want to keep your home safe. And there's some things you can do. And I was going to ask you about additional services you have. And these are some of the additional services. Would you speak to each of these, maybe just quickly?
Sure. So other services that we do, and to keep your trees as healthy as possible, especially during construction or especially afterwards, if you know that you are, or maybe it's just an older tree that's, maybe it's just compaction through, if not, just through time. But if there was any type of construction where you're building a house or an addition or a deck, if you're impacting that soil needs, or roots need air through the soil. So if you compact that soil down, tree roots can't find those air pockets to move through. So there are ways to improve soil structure, and that's usually adding compost, leaf grow. There's stuff called biochar, which is basically it's wood that is heated up very slowly with oxygen, and it breaks it down into this charcoal. And the charcoal itself doesn't have really any nutrient value to it. It just soil amendment. So you want to add that into the soil, and that's going to help bring in air pockets, allow to break up that compaction as well. And so people go, all right, well, how do you put that into the soil? Do you just put it on top of it? That's one way. But another way is stuff that we do is called air spading and vertical mulching. So air spading is a high pressure tool that you basically, it's connected to a hose which has a wand, and you spray the ground, and it's high pressure air that blows away the soil without injuring the root system. So you can literally uncover the tree roots to a tree. And
that is an amazing process. Look at that picture.
Yep. So what that does is, and it's, you can do this type of service to even transplant a tree in a way where you can uncover all the root systems, tie up the root system carefully, and then you're able to use other machinery to pick up that tree where we're not damaging a lot of roots. So that one picture there, you can see how many roots are away from the canopy. And you know, they're probably in this regard, they're more or less going to remove that tree. They're going to transplant that particular tree, but you're uncovering the root system. So maybe you are building a deck or a sidewalk, and you want to know where the tree roots. So you might see that and go, wow, there's so many there. I have to move said structure away to keep the vitality of the tree. Because again, the tree roots are the most important of the tree. It's the lungs of your tree. If you take away part of your lungs, you're not gonna be able to breathe well. Same thing with tree roots. If you damage too much of the tree roots, the impact of a tree is going to be impacted for sure. So you can fluff up, if you have some soil and you use air spade to blow up that soil, you allow this air pockets to come in. It just kind of just fluffs it all up. It's just like the soil is like melted butter at that point. And it just allow tree roots. So then you can add in that organic soil. You can add in humates. You can add in that biochar, which lasts forever. It doesn't break down. It's not like humates that is organic enough where it breaks down. This stuff lasts in, and it just improves the soil. And then you can add mulch over top of it, which mulches is great because it just acts like a sponge. Now, not too much, because too much mulch is also problematic. But the right amount each year can certainly keep in that moisture that's needed. It can also whisk away if there's too much moisture as well. But the other example here is called vertical mulching, which is basically a drill that you want to, like a grid pattern, just to break up some extra compaction if you don't want to do the vertical mulching or the air spading. The vertical mulching is a little bit cheaper. It's not as labor intensive, where we just drill into the ground about as far as we can, 6 inches, sometimes even a foot or two. Sometimes there can be, now the only downside of this is there can be some small damage to the root system. Usually they're small feeder roots and that you should be okay. But generally if it hits a big root, it stops. And then you know that you can't go any deeper. And then you move like a grid every 1.5 to 2 feet. And then you add in that organic soil from there. So you allow those roots, so once they hit that organic soil, they'll really take that in and keep growing. So
Andrew, on the air spading, you said it gets really soft and spongy like butter. So I'm picturing like when I plant a potted plant and then after a little while the soil compacts, but you're not going to have a hole in your front yard because you added back in the biochar or the compost or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah. It breaks up the soil just adding air to it. It doesn't, it can get a little dusty, so it can blow away a lot of the soil too, but generally it just fluffs it up. So you're not really getting rid of the soil. That one picture where there's no soil around it, they were purposely blowing that away to make sure that they uncovered enough roots where they could tie them up and then take that tree and
so that particular one was for a transplant.
Right. Yep. But if you do that where we're just sort of fluffing up and breaking up that compaction, then it fluffs it up. It doesn't really go anywhere. But as you add in new organic soil or biochar, it just helps improve that. So and then it will compact a little bit because as it settles down, but you're not squishing it down.
Okay, gotcha. So in these last couple minutes, and I know we're a little bit over, but I wanted to ask a question for our friends who are allergy sufferers, which is, what are the trees that are more or less friendly for those of us who suffer for allergies? I know you told me a little, it was kind of funny about you getting in the line of work you're in, but maybe you could speak to that for a second.
Yeah, well, I'm allergic to trees too, so I have to take medicine. Yeah, I gotta take my Allegra to make sure my allergies are in check. So, but yeah, it's mainly the bigger trees. And everyone's different, right? So, I'm allergic to oaks, maples, and river birch. Those are my 3 main trees, and we have oaks and maples here mostly, more than any other tree here. But sycamores will do the same. Pines produce a ton of pollen. So it just depends. I mean, everyone's different on what they're allergic to. Let's certainly go to an allergist to figure out what you are allergic to. But a lot of your bigger trees are going to produce a whole heck of a lot more pollen than something like a dogwood or a small ornamental tree.
A crepe myrtle. to use
Right.
our crepe again. Well, you and I were talking about how those big white pines, I walked by them in, I don't know, early April, maybe it was. And I just was going under a branch with my dog and I hit it. And it's just cloud
Oh,
of like yellowish green dust came off it. And I thought, no wonder people who have trouble with these. I mean, I felt like if I'd have had allergy suffer with me, I would have killed them right there, So,
yeah.
all right, we got one more for you.
Sure.
Cicadas. They're on
Yeah.
everybody's mind. They're on
Mhm.
some people's palate. Just kidding. But I did see something about them eating them. But we have a lot of cicadas in the area, and I'm getting questions like, are they going to damage my trees? And so, what can you share with us about cicadas and what people need to know?
So cicada are anomaly for sure. Entomologists don't even understand it. So the fact that this particular brood is every 17 years. There's I think 16 to 1900 different styles of cicada, which is just crazy. And we're just lucky enough to have the 17-year one. So like clockwork, they come out mid to late May, which they're doing now. They probably would have been out sooner, but we've experienced some cold weather until now. So they're all out right now. Well, not all out. They're out now. They're really climbing up most of your trees, fences, whatever they want. They'll come out and what they want to search for anything that's vertical. So anything they can grab a hold of to go vertical, then they'll molt from the exoskeleton and come out. And so when they first come out, they're white, and then they turn into that middle picture there that you see. And then once temperature gets really warm, then they fly up and then they'll start singing. So I think by the end of this week, probably even the next 2 days, when it really gets warm, they're really going to be out and about, and that's where all the males sing. So that loud noise that you hear, that's all the males doing that, just trying to bait the females to come in. So then once they mate, then the females use their ovipositors to inject their eggs into usually they want to be up high, so the larger trees, and they want about a pencil width of wood, and those are usually the 6 inches to a foot on your trees. So they use their ovipositor, scrape a slit into that bark, inject their eggs into it. After then everyone dies, then the eggs will hatch, feed on the plant, that part of where they're at. They drop down and they burrow themselves back into the ground for the next 17 years. And then what we'll see is shortly after that, we'll see a lot of dieback. It's called flagging. So at times, basically that 6 inches to a foot will turn brown because the tree, since there's damage there, excuse me, and as the tree translocates its water and minerals and nutrients, it can't get past that point because the cambium layer, the xylem and phloem, a part of that is injured there. So then you get that little branch there, and it's called, I call it nature's way of pruning. So those little branches will just break off at some point down the road. It doesn't harm the trees. The only thing, there's a picture here that's a smaller tree. They can possibly impact smaller trees that are about a year old, or about 8 to 10 feet and lower. So if it's a young tree, you're going to want to use some cicada netting to net that tree, but you also want to be careful how you net it, because if you just sort of drape it over, and if the point of the tree drapes over like this for 4 to 6 weeks while it's actually growing, when you take that net off, the tree can stay this way. So you want to be careful of how you net the tree. You want to bring it down to the base of the tree because you don't want anything to climb up through. If you use stakes and then you leave an open area, they could certainly go under if they're nearby. So one trick that I found and even used myself is if you get a milk jug, get a milk jug, turn it upside down, put a stake through that hole, and then have that milk jug above the center of the tree. So if that is above it, then you can drape your netting over top of that, and it's not going to impact the top part of that tree. And
so how do you attach the milk jug? Do you attach the stake further down to the trunk?
The best thing to do is get a stake that is smaller than the hole of the milk jug, put it right through, and then you want either a really long stake or put 2 stakes together so you can mount them in the tree, and then you can use duct tape or something to, if the tree, to put 2 of them together, and then that milk jug is on the very top. and you can drape it over, and you should be able to save that tree so you don't bend it over. I've seen plenty of them that are bending it over, and there's a possibility that the tree can stay that way.
Should go staple your card to those netted bags.
Yeah, you can certainly distort the shape of your tree if you leave it on there for too long.
Andrew, this is so good, from learning about like the pheromones that trees let off that attract killers to, you know, to how to appropriately bag your tree, and the fact that the cicadas are not really going to hurt unless you have a little tree. I mean, we've learned so much, and I know there's more we could learn. I just want to thank you for joining us today. We went long, but it was really good information. I don't know if we have any questions. If we do, if those of you watching have questions, you can certainly reach out to Andrew. Here's all his contact info. You can message us and we'll get in touch with Andrew, or if you ever lose his info, we'll put you in touch with him. He primarily works Montgomery County, I guess mid and lower Montgomery County, right, Andrew?
Yep.
But he's got colleagues all around the metro region. So if you need a referral, we can get you one. I highly recommend. You've heard me talking about it. I mean, I'm almost a tree hugger, and I just feel like, you know, we need to be stewards of the land our houses sit on also. So anyway, so Andrew, thank you for joining us today. Anybody watching, we hope you will share this. We're going to give Andrew a copy of today's video, and we're going to make it available on our Facebook, on our website, and on YouTube, so you can always refer to it. But again, if you, for whatever reason, misplace information, can't remember what episode you saw something in, please reach out to me. I'm always happy to share good info, great local service providers, and you know, here's to your tree health, right? So and don't keep your realtor friends a secret, whether you need somebody in this area. I hope you'll reach out to me if you've got questions, or if you need somebody in another part of the country. We are always reaching out to people in other parts of the country, and you know, helping to make good connections. So I think that's what this is all about, us small business people helping each other. So thank you for joining us today. Andrew, thank you so much for imparting all of this knowledge. It was really great.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And Jennifer, thank you as always for helping behind the scenes. You're just a wizard, and I appreciated you pulling together all the slides and the cicada photos too. So this is one of those things, won't happen again for 17 years. So anyway, I do remember one quick thing. I remember I had clients I picked up from the airport. We were driving somewhere. I don't remember why I got them from the airport. I guess we were going right out on a housing tour. And when we got away from the airport, they were like, "What is that noise?" This was 17 years ago. And they were from out of the area. And I hadn't even thought to say anything about it, but I was like, oh, those are cicadas. And then when they saw them, the wife almost decided not to move to this region. But I said, oh, it's fine. It won't happen again for 17 years. Yep. Anyway, so thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Andrew. We'll catch you in another 2 weeks for another episode of Ask the Expert. And I think we've got a home automation person booked for that Tuesday. So stay tuned, and we'll look forward to catching you next time. Please share the information in the video with your friends and colleagues and family members. Bye.
Bye.